Welcome Home, a podcast for veterans about veterans by veterans, is a project of Willing Warriors and the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Good morning. I'm your host, Larry Ziliars, Director of Culinary Services here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run. This week, our guest is Jeff Gottesfeld, and he is an author of children's books, and he's just released a brand new book called Honor Flight, which is the story of the Honor Flight program and how it brings elderly veterans to D.C. to see memorials. And this is an amazing book for kids, and I want to talk to him about this book and a couple of other military-oriented children's books he's written. So, Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
It is great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
So, are you prior service?
Oh, the right answer would be yes, absolutely. But the truthful answer, no. Not. I did not serve. I've got three big strapping brothers. They did not serve, nor did my parents, nor did my grandparents. In fact, I came of age during the Vietnam era, and if you had told 17-year-old Jeff in Teaneck, New Jersey, that one day he would be centering his children's book, writing themes of the American military, 17-year-old Jeff would have said you were out of your mind.
Well, then, how did it come about that you decided to write this book? Well, let's go back and let's take a look. Your very first military-themed book came out in, I think, 2021, called 21 Steps, Guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And how did it come about that you wanted to do a children's book with that theme?
Well, fortunately, I didn't stay 17 years old. I grew up and traveled America and traveled the world. I lived in France for a while. I've visited 46 out of 50 states. And my viewpoint on the world and on America, as it should, shifted with age to where I came to see the United States military as probably the greatest fighting force for good in the history of the planet. And with that realization, I started visiting national cemeteries on Memorial Days, probably going back to the late 1980s even. It was Memorial Day 2012. I was going to say 2016, 2012, where I saw a tombstone. No, 2016. Let's get it right. A tombstone at the National Cemetery in Los Angeles that said unknown on it. On Memorial Day, and wandering around, I saw another one that said unknown, flashed on my own boyhood visit to the tomb of the unknown soldier in D.C. And at Arlington National Cemetery, and realized that I knew nothing. I didn't know who was buried there. I didn't know when the tomb was erected. And I certainly didn't know anything about the tomb guards who guarded it so carefully. By the time I left the cemetery that day, I was determined to write that book.
How is it different? I mean, you've got to break that story down considerably when you're writing something for children. So with all that information, how do you decide what to put in?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the next step of the question is, how can you tell that story in a way that's going to work for a third grader?
Yeah.
And I went at it once in a sort of a third person kind of storytelling way. I was going to have a kid come with his parents to DC and then go to Arlington on just an absolutely ghastly rainy day. The kid didn't want to go, but the kid would meet a tomb guard. Tomb guard was going to tell the kid all about what they did in the tomb. And, it wasn't terrible. It was probably okay, but it wasn't good enough. And I give credit to my agent who knew that I had told the story in my first children's book from a unique perspective. And she said, Jeff, do you think you can tell this story from the point of view of the tomb itself? And I said, no, but maybe I can do it from the point of view of the first unknown. And once I had the point of view, and I had a first person voice who could speak for unknown soldiers, that broke the story open. And then I had a perspective, right, for what the unknown would know and what the unknown would see.
Mm. Well, it's a fascinating concept. It really is. Well, because most people don't write books for kids, so it's a mystery to us how it happens. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. So now let's talk about your latest book, which was just released on March 3rd. And listeners, this one is called Honor Flight: Celebrating America's Veterans. And it's about the Honor Flight program and how this program brings elderly veterans for a free trip from various parts of the country to D.C. with an escort, usually a relative, and they give them a first-class treatment and get to visit the various memorials around the city. But this was just released on March 3rd, and I'll have a link to all the books in the show notes, so don't worry. Going to be easy for you to order them. And the thing that caught my eye about this book is the size of it. It's a large book. It's what I always remembered people saying and referring to as a coffee table book because it was bigger than your usual book. But I really love this book because the illustrations are phenomenal. They're just really, really good, and it tells your story in great, very soft pictures that are so meaningful. Did you go on an honor flight? How did you figure out, how to write this book?
I did. First of all, those illustrations are done by Matt Tavares, who is famous. And Matt was the illustrator on 21 Steps. So we are back together on this. At this point, we are friends. His wife and my de facto wife, we go out together. So we are completely in sync in our storytelling. For Honor Flight, I got the idea from obviously after 21 Steps, I spoke to lots of vets and lots of veteran groups and then like kids groups, USO and VAs. And I heard about this program, started researching it, and it was amazing. I mean, it's totally volunteer. There's no cost to the veteran. The cost to the guardian is actually fairly modest to support the flight. And I was already at work on the book when I went on my own honor flight, which was in April of 2023. It was with the Honor Flight Central Coast, California, out of Santa Maria, California. And I was the guardian for a person I had never met before, a fellow named David McGinley. Vietnam era vet, served on a destroyer, tin can sailor. And I picked up Dave in Oxnard, California, and drove to Santa Maria, and we were together for the next 3 or 4 days. And by the end of this, we were buds. And it was just so beautiful to see this. I mean, it's all these elderly folks, and it's so loud because they're talking with one another and forming friendships and swapping stories, and they get to have this trip where their service is celebrated, and then they get the homecoming that many of them, especially from the Vietnam era, never got. So for this book, I tell the story from the point of view of an unnamed vet who goes on an honor flight. His guardian is a teacher of a 4th grade, and I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end of the book.
Right. Well, I'm not going to divulge it either. But what I really like about this book, listeners, is that this is a great way to introduce your younger children in your family to what dad or grandpa did in the military, what their service was like. And it also instills in them the concept that they should be rewarded for what they did, for standing up, raising their hand, volunteering. I went in 77. My class graduated in 1975, and we were the very first volunteers to go into the military. Everybody before that had been drafted.
Right.
And so that's what today's military and service branches are. They're full of volunteers. Less than 1% of our population serves. And so this is a great book to help you explain what your dad or grandfather or uncle or next door neighbor did in supporting and being there to serve in the military. So please, listeners, pick up a copy of this book. Again, we're going to have that link in the show notes. So as excited as I was about this book, I'm a little bit more excited about a forthcoming book in October, one about military children called We All Serve. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be delighted. And again, this is post 21 steps. I'm talking to the Elizabeth Dole Foundation kids, and I'm talking to USO kids, and I'm traveling to Eastern North Carolina to speak at Blue Star schools with all these military kids. And for me growing up in Teaneck, New Jersey, with no one in the service, nobody who'd been in the service in my family, and certainly no one who was career, I didn't know really much about the lives of so-called military brats.
Mm-hmm.
And they look like everybody else. They look like every other kid, but their lives are not like any other kids. Their lives are extraordinary and special and different. I mean, mom and dad's first responsibility may not be to them. It's to the service. The service says you're going to Germany, you're going to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
If mom or dad goes on a mission, there may not be Christmas until February. There's nobody to read the bedtime story for you. You are a de facto ambassador for the United States when you're traveling outside the U.S. There are all these aspects of military brats' lives that you just can't see from the outside. So I want kids reading this book who are brats to say, okay, I'm looking in the mirror here. And I want kids who are not brats, but who may have brats in their classroom or encounter them, to have a window into what that life is like.
Yeah, because it is hard. I think for most military children, the hardest thing is it's two things. Number one, seeing their parents leave on deployment, not knowing when they're going to come back, or they hear from other children whose parents didn't come back. And so they have to live with that. But then there's also the PCS, or permanent change of station, where, they're here for 2 years, then they're there for 2 years. A good friend of ours is a retired Army 4-star general. Well, he moved his family nearly 30 times over the course of his career. And during the formative years, when you're a young kid, every 2 years you got to make new friends. And we see very often, especially towards the end of their career, we see military service members who say, I'm going to take an unaccompanied assignment for the last couple of years because I don't want to move my kids out of school this last time. They're in high school. I don't want them to get up and have to go to a new school, especially if I'm going overseas, like to Korea or someplace like that.
Sure. And what I've seen is that these kids themselves, they'll tell you, there's huge advantages to being a brat. You travel the world. You are in a largely color neutral environment in the military. Or that's not that people are color blind,
Mm-hmm.
but this is a skills based system. You have excellent DoD schools. But on the other hand, if people ask you where you're from, your answer might be, "Well, I'm from the Navy," right? Because where'd you, right where'd you grow up? You grew up everywhere.
Yeah.
You may not get to see grandma and grandpa more than once a year. It is a very, very different way to come of age.
Yeah. How did you decide you wanted to do a book about military children?
It was the military kids themselves telling me their stories.
Mm.
In talks that I did to USO, talks I did in schools, kids would come. I'd ask people to raise their hands, like in the classroom. Anybody who's got a parent or an uncle, who's on active duty,
Mm-hmm.
and then the hands would go up, and I'd get connected to these kids, and they'd tell me their stories, and I looked at the literature, and here I am again. Look, I'm an imperfect messenger here, to do this, but the stories need to be told, and it's not like they're new, right?
Yeah.
Every single thing I'm writing about has been around for a long time. Tomb of the Unknown Soldier since 1921.
Yeah.
Honor Flight Program since 2005. Military brats forever.
Mm-hmm.
So if no one else is going to tell the story, I'm going to do it as well as I possibly can.
Well, I've got two stories for you about military kids. Here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run, we're up on a high hill, and it's super windy. And it's so windy that we need to take down in November the service flags around the front of the retreat. We have each of the service flags plus our own flag that flies, and we take them down. At a nearby school, there are a good number of military children, and they fundraise to buy us new flags. And then on May 1st of each year, the kids come out before school with their parents and bring us those new flags, and we partner them with a curmudgeon-y American Legion guy, and together they raise the flag while we have a bugler play. And it's just, these are amazing kids.
Yeah, they are.
And so that's one way that these kids touch us. Another is we have a close association with a nonprofit called We Signed Up To. And this is a nonprofit that was started by two young ladies who stayed at our retreat with their father in 2018 when he was undergoing treatment at Walter Reed. And they came out and they stayed and had a wonderful time. So now fast forward to today, and this last year in 2025, almost a year ago, they formed this nonprofit called We Signed Up To, and it's a support group for military children of wounded warriors.
Yeah, right.
And it's an online safe space for these kids to get together, and they have a lot of programs where they do for the young kids. They teach them how to make little puppets and things. I mean, it's a great little organization. But these two military children decided that these kids who are children of wounded warriors needed their own space. And so they took it upon themselves to do that. And here in April 4th, we're gonna host their 1-year anniversary at the Warrior Retreat. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's wonderful. The illustrator for my book is an Army brat, Tamika Grooms. So she knows what she's drawing. We talk about each of the specific branches of the service, from Army to Navy to Air Force to Marines to Space Force to Coast Guard. And we get into at least a little bit of what you're talking about having a wounded warrior, either physically or psychologically, who comes home and is part of the family.
Yeah. That's a whole different way of life. It's one way that they live with their parents who never deploy or who are, stationed for 3 to 4 years at one base, and they don't have any deployments because of the type of job they have or whatever. But then it's another one when you have a wounded warrior in your family, and children are the hidden heroes. They have to step up, and they have to assume roles that most children don't even think about.
For me, it's my kind of story. I am much less interested in how people present on the outside than on what's going on the inside and what makes them tick on the inside. So military brats who look like everybody else and have these extraordinary lives. That's my kind of story. Tomb guards who are every walk of life, every state in the union, every race, religion, creed, as I say in the book, and who put on those uniforms and train for the hardest job to get in the Army and walk that mat for 2 years. That's my kind of story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're special people.
They are. I've talked to lots of them. They are a breed apart.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listeners, I'm going to have the links to the books in the show notes. So please order your copy, share them. They're going to make great holiday gifts for those service members or veterans in your family to give to them. So please order the books. You won't be disappointed. Give them to your local library. Give them to the local school. Encourage your American Legion to order copies, or the VFW. They're a great way to introduce kids to military service and various aspects of it. And so, Jeff, I can't thank you enough for coming on and spending a little time with us and talking about the books.
I loved it, and maybe we'll talk after We All Serve comes out, okay?
Yeah, for sure. So, listeners, we'll have another episode next Monday morning at 0500. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can reach us at podcast@willingwarriors.org. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms. We're on YouTube and Wreaths Across America Radio. So until then, thanks for listening.
The Welcome Home podcast is brought to you by Willing Warriors, a nonprofit organization serving active duty service members and veterans since 2012. To learn more, please visit our webpage at willingwarriors.org.